Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to tonight's host. With over 1,275 airshow performances in front of more than 135 million fans, one of the most inspiring aviators of our time and 2017 Bob Hoover Award recipient, Sean D. Tucker.
So here we are. Here we are, kind of like the same place we were last year and the year before and the year before that. And I remember the first year we had R.A. Bob Hoover, and many of the people in this room participated in getting that statue built, that 7-foot-high statue built at Hoover. And Bob was the first recipient. And I got to tell you, all of us in that room were just so happy for Bob to see him have the love of his friends for all the years he's given to us and paying him, and seeing that statue there. And General Daly worked so hard to get it in Hoover with his Shrike commander. And Bob was the first award recipient. And it touched him to know that he has that kind of love from his friends. And we're here for the 4th annual Bob Hoover Award presentation. And all of us have a little bit of Bob in our souls right now because how he touched us. And to have an event tonight, again, to honor somebody very special, who also was a very dear friend of Bob's. But the point I'm trying to make is, we in this room own the character of what aviation is all about, of general aviation. We in this room own the reverence of what aviation is all about. We in this room own the passion. And we're celebrating Bob's legacy. And it's up to us, it's incumbent upon us to keep this legacy going. So I was lucky enough to be the second recipient, and I was just so honored. Harrison Ford was the 3rd recipient last year, and I know it means just as much to Harrison because of our love for Bob and what he represented, his core values, his tenacity, his iron will, his passion, his grace, his love for this country, his imagination, and his happiness, because he'd say, "You people are so magnificent. I'm so grateful to be here. I'll be walking on this earth and flying above it. This is my journey and I'm having fun." So, what do you think of that? Okay, so we couldn't have a better organization owning this legacy, because they have the reverence to do it correctly every single time. They have, and they consider it a responsibility to this country to keep the man we love's memory and legacy alive. And so, without further ado, the big guy himself, Mr. Mark Baker. Thank you.
Well, as always, you're always worried about Sean's energy. You never know if he's going to get up for the game. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being here for the 4th annual Bob Hoover, R.A. Bob Hoover Award. You know, as AOPA was founded nearly 80 years ago, and by the way, this terminal didn't exist then, but it sure looks cool to be part of the Art Deco part of aviation, the golden age of aviation. But for AOPA, it's always been about the freedom to fly, and how we can do that in ways that can express it, embody it, making sure that there's an emotion attached to it. And for all of those in the room, and I think most of you have, had the opportunity to know the late Bob Hoover, who embodied that true pioneer, the inspiration, his passion for flight was unbelievable. Had the opportunity to get to know him a long time ago. So 4 years ago, Bob agreed to have his name forever memorialized as a tribute to aviators whose airmanship, leadership, mentorship, passion for aviation inspires a love for flight and countless others. And AOPA has been entrusted with carrying this legacy out in memory through this award. In the words of Bob, the most important thing an aviator can do is to encourage others to want to fly. And that is one of the reasons all of us are here, to share AOPA and Bob's passion. And one of the reasons we started the AOPA You Can Fly initiative. You might have seen some of our You Can Fly banners around the venue tonight. But You Can Fly was created to bolster AOPA's work and support the growing pilot community. In the last year, You Can Fly has moved the needle in making aviation more accessible. There are currently more than 2,000 students enrolled in 80 high schools across the country, including Sean's, that are using the AOPA's 9th grade aviation STEM program for the 2018 and 2019 school year. We have also seen hundreds of students testing for the 10th grade curriculum this year. Their numbers will continue to grow each year. We're proud to say that 25% of these students enrolled in the 9th grade program are female. Yeah, about time. And 52% of the students enrolled in this elective this year are from underrepresented groups. You Can Fly, yeah, I also agree with that. It's an initiative that helps pilots fly more often for less, and this is the Flying Club Initiative. It supports a growing network of flying clubs. Since the program's inception, we've helped start more than 100 new flying clubs around the country. And our Rusty Pilots program has added 6,000 people back to the Active Flying League. You Can Fly is funded through the contributions to the AOPA Foundation and not membership dues. We're here tonight talking about all the accomplishments You Can Fly has achieved in such a short amount of time. Working to make flying more accessible and affordable takes an army. But tonight, we're here to honor those of you from outside AOPA who have made contributions to promote and preserve general aviation. We're also here tonight to recognize some recipients of some of our Hart, Tramp, and Sharpless Awards, and of course, the Bob Hoover Trophy winner. Thanks again to everyone making it here tonight. I and AOPA really appreciate coming together as a community and sharing this evening. Without further ado, we've got some guests of honor I want to share with tonight. Here to help me introduce our first honoree is Richard McSpadden. Richard leads our Air Safety Institute as the executive director. He focuses on reducing general aviation accidents through research, education, and industry collaboration. He's a commercial multi-engine and a CFI with over 4,500 hours and more than 30 years of flying experience. One of the main highlights of Richard's career, including flying with me, is a dedicated 20 years to the Air Force as a commander and flight leader for the Thunderbirds. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask Richard McSpadden to join me on stage and introduce second ever GA Safety Award.
I had a lot more hair before I flew with Mark, but we at the AOPA Air Safety Institute think the key to aviation safety is knowledgeable pilots who are trained and proficient. You wrap them in a culture that creates good decision making, and you put them in reliable equipment. Those are the keys to safety. And we know that there are people in our industry that have made remarkable achievements in one or more of those areas that have had a lasting impact on general aviation. So we created the General Aviation Safety Award, not just to thank them, but to make sure the entire industry recognizes the impact that they've had on general aviation. So join me in watching this short video to honor tonight's awardees.
The AOPA Air Safety Institute is pleased to present the 2019 General Aviation Safety Award to ForeFlight co-founders Tyson Weiss and Jason Miller. Their remarkable journey began in 2007 with the desire and vision to create aviation software that would make desktop flight planning easier. That vision blossomed into creating and adapting innovative flight planning applications for mobile use. When the iPhone hit the market in 2007, the two instantly began work on a flight planning app for new technology, then quickly modified the app for the iPad in 2010. ForeFlight today represents more than 70% of the electronic flight bag market.
I think one of the reasons ForeFlight's been so successful is that Jason and Tyson really approach it as pilots. They've really democratized technology. You know, you can now have with an iPad and ForeFlight, you can have most of the same safety features that previously you would have needed a brand new airplane with a glass cockpit to get. So even a pilot renting a 60-year-old airplane can have terrain alerts and airport information and in-flight weather and traffic and all these features that make flying safer. And that's really a testament to, I think, ForeFlight and really the market they sort of invented here. Tyson and Jason have made flying safer for tens of thousands of pilots because they've been focused on giving pilots the information they need in an easy-to-use and affordable way.
Today, ForeFlight is a product that most pilots can't live without. Right? Without ForeFlight in the airplane, you feel naked. I have the power of ForeFlight in every airplane I fly, from a decathlon to an SR-22. It's just an amazing tool.
Tyson Weiss and Jason Miller disrupted general aviation in a positive and lasting way with their pioneering application, ForeFlight. They made flight planning easier and more accurate, expanded pilot situational awareness, and improved in-flight decision-making. The AOPA Air Safety Institute is proud to recognize Jason and Tyson and their impact on general aviation safety.
Thank you, Tyson and Jason, for having the vision and dedication to advance GA safety for all.
Tyson and Jason, would you join us on stage, please?
Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, Richard, thank you. When we got the news that we were receiving this award, I called Jason and I had a tear in my eye because we just feel so grateful that aviation is where we've made our home, and the impact that we made is something we'll be forever grateful for. When we get letters from spouses or pilots who have made it safely back to home, that's one of the things that we cherish the most, is we've brought people back to their families and transformed the way they fly. And so this is the award we will cherish the most. So thank you, Mark.
Yes, thank you guys so much. This is, you know, ever since the two of us got together, safety has been the entire reason, the crux of everything that we've done. And we never dreamed our tiny little app would have the impact it has, and it still amazes us to this day. And it's just amazing to be, recognized this way. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well done. Thank you, gentlemen. It truly is a great product that we do know has brought safety to many pilots in the cockpits. The Sharpless Award is named for the AOPA's first chairman of the board, Lawrence P. Sharpless. Think about that, 1939. It is given to people who have made an extraordinary contribution to general aviation. Senator Kay Kahele of Hawaii is an 18-year combat veteran, a pilot, commissioned officer in the Hawaii National Guard, United States Air Force, where he continues to serve as a major with the 201st Air Operations. He also works as a commercial airline pilot with Hawaiian Airlines, and mentioned that he flew into New York yesterday, or I guess today. Has an instrumental in starting the Aeronautical Science program in the U of H of Hilo, creating a huge opportunity for local students to pursue careers as pilots. So, as well as emerging markets, as well unmanned, he is the Senate Chair of the Hawaii State Legislature Aviation Caucus, which he helped found and champion the 2018 legislation with AOPA's members in Hawaii to deal with issues in state airports and opportunities to grow general aviation there. I'd like to ask Melissa McCaffrey, who's AOPA's Western Pacific Regional Manager, to join me on stage to present this award. And now, please join me. Senator, we do appreciate your work in general aviation, what's going on in Hawaii. Please have the microphone.
Aloha. Let's try that one more time. Aloha.
Aloha.
You know, it's an honor for me to be here tonight, and thank you, Mark, for that introduction. It's great to be surrounded by so many people whose common thread that runs in all of us is our love for flying and for aviation. I'm humbled to be here for this event and to honor a man that I know we all look up to, Mr. Bob Hoover. You know, before I go on, I would just want to thank two people that aren't here, and that's my mom and dad. Because it was really them who instilled the love in flying in myself. My mom was a flight attendant at United Airlines for 40 years, and As a kid growing up in Hawaii, the world was our oyster. We flew all over the world, and we had an opportunity to see so many different things. And when I graduated from high school, as an 18-year-old, my graduation present was flying lessons at the local Hilo airport. And within a year and a half, I had my first flight, and I was hooked. I was a 19-year-old commercial pilot flying and taking tourists that came all over the world to Hawaii to show them the waterfalls, the tropical rainforests, the beautiful volcanoes of our islands just at 19. That love of flying took me to the Hawaii Air National Guard, where I had a chance to fly all over the world and serve our country in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And that career took me to Hawaiian Airlines. And today I'm proud, 25 years later, to be a commercial airline pilot with Hawaiian. As I went to career days and career fairs to talk about how to fly and my love of flying and to inspire kids all over Hawaii to learn how to fly, what I found was students would say, you know, I want to do what you're doing, but I can't afford it, or there's no flying here in Hawaii. It's too much money to go to the mainland to learn how to fly. So 7 years ago, we started this journey of creating a commercial baccalaureate undergraduate aviation program at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. It took us 7 years, was approved by the Board of Regents in the fall, and I'm proud to say in the fall of 2019, we're going to have our first cohort of students, of local kids in Hawaii who can learn how to fly and do it right here at the University of Hawaii at Hilo in Hawaii. And that's what it's all about. It's inspiring the next generation to have that love of flying that we all have. And in order to do that, we really need great regulations and great rules that allow our pilots to fly throughout our country. You know, in Hawaii, we recently had some issues that dealt with unfriendly policies to general aviation. And working with AOPA and Melissa McCaffrey, I'm proud to say, and working with AOPA, we passed legislation last year to stop the discrimination against private pilots in Hawaii. And that was something that I'm really proud of. You know, AOPA's mission is to protect the freedom to fly, and it's absolutely critical and crucial to the future of aviation and our economy and to so many young people. And I know all of us here today share that same commitment to keep our skies free. So on behalf of the state of Hawaii, Mark, Sean Tucker, Harrison Ford, Melissa McCaffrey, and everyone at the AOPA team, thank you so much, and all of the honorees, congratulations. Mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There you go. The Hartranft Award is named after the first AOPA president, the former chairman of the board, Doc Hartranft. I being the fifth, only the fifth in 80 years of AOPA's history to be a CEO, it's important to recognize that leadership that has allowed this organization to stay in the game for 80 years. It's given annually to an elected or appointed government official for their significant contributions to the advancement of general aviation. Tonight we present this award to someone who has worked to educate colleagues in Congress about the importance of general aviation. Coming from the state where general aviation generates $3 billion in annual exports and produces 40% of all the GA aircraft, Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas has exemplified great leadership in working close to aviation and making sure the skills gap comes together, bringing more people into the workforce. He's also been a vocal opponent to proposals to privatize our air traffic control system. It's my honor to present the Joseph B. Doc Hartranft Award to Kansas Senator Jerry Moran. Unfortunately, Jerry and all the other congressmen are on vacation this week. He won't be here, but we'll be meeting with him in his office and presenting this award. Let's give a round of applause for Jerry Moran. So for most of the past century, Bob Hoover gave his heart and soul to America, and I always like to tell a personal story about Bob, and I was more than a dozen years ago, sitting at a Young Eagles dinner in Oshkosh, a great event, as we all know. And I got seated next to Bob with my, at that time, young son, probably 10, 12 years old. And Bob engaged the conversation with my 10, 12-year-old son at the time with deep, really deep interest in finding out what makes people tick, and then, of course, telling a story. Not only was one of the greatest pilots in the world, but he was also a true gentleman. And I've written about what I consider to be the grace of people of that vintage, that era, and our responsibility to carry on that grace. And a friend and an advocate for aerospace, Bob Hoover is the one pilot all pilots look up to. AOPA has been entrusted to present the Bob Hoover Trophy annually memory of Bob. And I'd like to thank Mike Herman when we did the taping of this a number of years ago. It was challenging because Bob has a way of taking you into different directions. To an aviator who exhibits the airmanship and the leadership and the passion for aviation, it was a life demonstrated by our friend Bob Hoover. Please enjoy this video.
There's not a man nor a woman in this room who, when we grow up, don't want to be just like R.A. Bob Hoover.
Jimmy Doolittle said that Bob Hoover was the greatest stick and rudder man that ever lived, and if you ever saw him fly, you would say the same thing. But Bob Hoover wouldn't say that.
I was the most least likely person to ever become a pilot, or a good one. And I just must tell you that I feel very humble about it all. I had a lot of people encouraging me.
And Bob paid that encouragement forward.
It was this, his ability and desire to share lessons and hear about yours. It was obvious that Bob was all about giving back and making others better, as opposed to pontificating and talking about himself.
The Bob Hoover Award will be presented each year to an aviator that best exemplifies Bob's airmanship, leadership, mentorship, and passion for aviation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present an award in my name to these great people who are following in my footsteps.
Airline pilot, air race pilot, test pilot, aerial cinematographer, aviation record setter, business jet evangelist, aviation entrepreneur, philanthropist. Clay Lacey has done just about everything there is to do in aviation.
Aviation's just been such wonderful life.
Clay built models as a kid and then took a ride in a stagger wing.
Once I flew, boy, I knew I really wanted to do that, look down and see the world.
And then a fellow wanted to build an airport on his grandmother's farm.
So I ain't never went farmed again in my life.
Private certificate at 15, commercial and instructor ratings at 16, and an application to United Airlines at 19.
Next thing I got a telegram, can you report to training in January?
He started flying United DC-3s in 1952. 2 years later, he joined the California Air National Guard and flew the F-86 Sabre jet.
Well, the first time I met Bob was at the Air National Guard in 1955, I think, in Boise, Idaho, at summer camp. And Bob was going around the country and Korea and all over demonstrating the F-86.
And then he met Bill Lear. Clay saw the huge potential for business jets and became the leading Learjet promoter.
And our first demonstrator I brought to Van Nuys Airport in November of 1964. I was still working with United all this time too, you know, but anyway, I was busy.
And that ultimately led to Clay Lacey Aviation.
You got to later been one of the demonstrators. And I started my company in 1968.
His Van Nuys location near Hollywood would prove fortuitous and profitable.
Oh, I know. We flew everybody in Hollywood practically and sold some airplanes there. I mean,
and that also led to movie work in the iconic Astrovision system.
Did a lot of movie work for Hollywood. I shot Top Gun. I was doing every airline commercial in the United States for sure.
Now, Clay was one of the original Reno Air Race pilots, flying his signature purple P-51.
Purchasing agent had ordered 1,500 gallons of purple paint instead of 50. So they were painting tugs, ladders, everything purple.
And there were other speed records, including coast to coast and back again in one day in this Learjet, and a round-the-world speed record in a 747, raising money for children's charities. There have been some bizarre flights.
One morning, got a phone call about 7 in the morning, and
Guy said, this is a human fly. I'm calling from Montreal, Canada. Little project. It wasn't advancing aviation.
And one or two hairy ones.
I have a Pilatus Porter. I still have it. And decided to put more fuel in it. And the FAA wanted me to do a flutter test. But on the last point of the dive test, fluttered. And ailerons came off.
Oh, my.
And one completely, and the other one was worse than coming off. It was half of it was hanging down, making the airplane roll. The airplane was flying sideways, and used the rudder, and it came in and just made a perfect three-point landing.
And Clay Lacy says his whole life has been luck. But the best, like Clay, make their own luck.
Well, Harrison, as the third recipient for the Hoover Trophy, I'd like you to have the honor of presenting this to our good friend, mentor, and partner in aviation. And thanks for what you do as well, partner. Woo! You can hold that.
This is a heavy lift in many different ways. I'm just an average pilot. It happens to find myself in this awkward position. I love aviation. It's changed my life. It's made me, I hope, a better person, and allowed me to participate in something that I think can change lives. And we've seen Sean change lives with the inspiration of Bob Hoover, with the Bob Hoover Academy. And I've known Clay Lacy for about 15 years, I think, 10, 15 years, maybe longer. Time goes by when you're having fun. And I was just looking at the Porter. I was thinking last night that one of the examples of Clay Lacy's great passion for aviation and generosity was the couple hours he spent with me flying that Porter on and off runway 18 left at Van Nuys, checking me out in that airplane. He's been a great inspiration. He's cut from the same cloth as Bob was. He's a generous gentleman. And it's an honor to know him, and it's an honor to be here tonight to present this award to him in respect and admiration for our friend, R.A. Bob Hoover. Clay.
Well, it's certainly a great honor to be here, and I feel very humble from receiving this award from AOPA. And I'm happy it's Bob Hoover, named after Bob Hoover. He was one of my very best friends, great guy, loved aviation. And I appreciate getting this award from Mark Baker and AOPA, which has been so important to aviation, not just general aviation, but all aviation, and promoting pilot training and promoting aviation in general. I've been very lucky to be in aviation, and I think the greatest thing about being in aviation has been the people I've met in aviation. I don't think there's any people as great a people anywhere in the world. The people in aviation that I've met and know are all very happy because they were doing something they love to do. I think it's the greatest thing about aviation. You hardly find a person in it that doesn't just love it. And they, I think, are honest people, generally speaking, very honest, probably more so than any other profession. Because in aviation, if you're not honest with yourself and your associates, it can be a catastrophic ending. You've got to be honest with what's going on. And I feel very lucky to have lived this life. I've lived, and starting in Wichita, Kansas, I got a real early start. I met a guy that was in 1945. The war wasn't over yet, but they were selling surplus airplanes, primarily liaison airplanes, L4s, L5s, and things. And he was bringing them into a golf course across from my grandmother's farm, which I would go out there every weekend. And he said, you know, the war's going to get over and they're going to have, this is GI flight training. He said, I'd like to put it in an airport. He said, I'd like to put it over there where your grandmother's farm is. And I said, well, I'll mention it to her. So I did. And she knew how bad I wanted to fly. So, and the next week she talked to him, and 3 weeks later there were airplanes landing there. The ticket just rolled down the wheat stubble and made a runway. And I never went out there to farm again. I went there just to the airplanes. And Orville Sanders was his name. He was so good to me, working primarily for Flying Time. And got started flying when I was 12 years old. And when I was 13, one evening he said, I'm going to go to town, buy some hamburgers. The place was, nobody else was there. He said, meantime, I'll crank you up and you can go fly around. And I thought, well, that's great. So he cranked me up. I had my first solo. And he did that a few times. And that our chief flight instructor one day, I was in the office with him alone, and he said, you know, I know you've been flying out here in the evenings by yourself. He said, you're going to get in trouble or get us in trouble. He said, well, when's your birthday? And I told him August 14th. And he went over to his desk and opened the top drawer and pulled out one of these forms to get your medical and student permit. He says, why don't you tell him you're 16 and get that permit and keep us out of trouble? And I thought, I never thought about that, but I thought that's one good idea, you know? So I did, and 2 weeks later, I got my student permit and got my student pilot's license. Then a year later, I got a private, and a year later, my commercial instructor's rating. And built up a fair amount of flying time, and about 1,000 hours. And when by the time I was 19, and United was hiring, and our chief mechanic gave me this ad from United, and it mentioned in there you should be 21. And I was hesitant about applying for the job, but my pilot's license said it was 21, so I went ahead and applied, and I started with United when I was 19, and wonderful company, and I started flying co-pilot on DC-3s. It was really a good life. And then 2 years later, the Vietnam War was on, or I mean, Korean War, and the trap board in Wichita was on my track, and So I found out about the Air National Guard and that they had slots for Air Force pilot training, which I did. I joined the Guard. Went to pilot training in the Air Force 1954 and 55, and came back to the Guard. And one of the first people I met there was Jack Conroy, who was the guy who built the Pregnant Guppy airplanes and was a good pilot and a really good guy. And he introduced me. He knew everybody in town in aviation, and he introduced me to people that I would have never met without his introduction, and one of them was Alan Paulson, and he got people, his family, and Alan and his family and kids, we got to be very good friends. And Alan, I talked Alan into getting into aircraft sales, and in about 1957, we started flying, buying DC-3s and Martin 404s. He made a deal with TDB to get the Martin 404s. So I had a great life, and was flying 80 hours a month with United, and then I didn't get paid for flying. I made some commissions, however, on aircraft sales. Was flying another 70 hours a month or so. I was flying a lot of months, but averaged 140 hours. So I was having a great time. And then later, I stayed with United, which is, like I said, a wonderful company, and they let me take a 747, fly around the world. In 1988, my friend Bruce McCaw, who's here this evening, he helped put there's Bruce, helped put the thing together. We had a great trip, flew around the world, 36 hours and 52 minutes, and from Seattle back to Seattle. I had a lot of interesting people on board, including Bob Hoover and his wife, and Neil Armstrong, and several other people, Bruce and Joe Clark, who also helped put the thing together. It was one of the greatest things in my career. It was just fantastic. We took 105 passengers, and with all the crew members and everything, we had 142 people, I believe, on board. It was a great trip. But I started, I was manager of sales for Learjet for Al Paulson's California Automotive Company. When the Lear first came out, I had met Bill Lear in 1958, evaluating an autopilot. He was going to build the L5, I think it was. And so when he started on Learjet, I took a friend of I knew that we sold the Martin 404 to over to meet Bill Lear. And Palm Springs, before he went to Switzerland to build the airplane. And he had Justin Dart, this guy's name was Elton McDonald, E.F. McDonald Company. And they both ordered 2 airplanes. So Bill wanted some orders before he went to Switzerland to say he actually had orders in hand. And he went to Switzerland. He couldn't speak to these workers there. After about a year, everybody spoke Italian, German, French, or Swiss. It was driving him crazy. He decided to come back to the United States because Bill liked every day to go out and walk around the factory and ask people what they were doing and say, it's great, but if you do it this way or this way, it'd be maybe a little better. And anyway, so that was a really high point in my life, was getting involved with the Learjet, manager of sales in the 11 Western states. And it was out in California and Hollywood. People sold airplanes to Frank Sinatra and several other people around and got to know him a while. It was a great time. And anyway, I just think that all of us in this room, I know there's many, many people involved with aviation, probably almost everyone. We've been lucky to be involved with something as much fun and as enjoyable and interesting as aviation. So I'm very honored to get this award, and the Bob Hoover Award. Like I said, Bob was a very close friend of mine. He flew around the world with me, Bruce and I, on the Friendship One flight, and he also went with me to Midway Island when the turn of the century, where we saw the New Year changed twice. We flew across the date line. First time came back to Midway Island, which is only a little over 100 miles from the date line, and saw it again the next day. So aviation's just been great, and I'm very honored to get this award from AOPA, which is, I think, it's just been a wonderful organization for all of us in aviation. And also very honored to have Sean Tucker, who's I consider a very good friend and an excellent aviator. We're world class, the best aerobatic pilot ever. And I feel very humbled to be here tonight. And all of you people here be in attendance, thank you very much.
All yours, buddy. Bring it home.
Is this a family? Is this a family? This is a family who just so loves this metaphor of flight, who just so loves this freedom. Clay, thank you. Let's hear it one more time for Clay Lacy. I mean, this is not some black tie event. We're here because this is a precious jewel that we have to keep nurturing. Our ForeFlight guys are doing it. Everybody in this room is committed to this excellence and execution, that this jewel we have is, this is the best America has to offer. And the kids we touch, the people we touch, the opportunity we have to share that magic of flight, to elevate people to be like Clay Lacy, to be like Bob Hoover, to be like us. So thanks a lot for coming. God bless America. Yeah, baby.